Hey everyone, Correct Genes here, and we have a rather interesting lock today. This is the DOM IX6sr, bit of a mouthful. It is a 5-pin dimple lock with 2 additional active sidebars, one operated by this interactive element at the tip of the key, and the other by a ball bearing which interacts with one of the dimples in the side of the key. And all of the other dimples in the key are passive. So what we'll do is we'll get this picked, and then we will take a look at exactly what makes this lock tick, because the active sidebar mechanisms are actually quite different from most other locks. Counterclockwise tension. Nothing on 1 through 4. That didn't feel like a good click. 5 is binding. Click on 5. Second click on 5. Some counter rotation on 1. I'll leave them alone for now. Nothing on the other pins. Okay, click on 1. Counter rotation on 3. Got a click. Lost our false set. Alright, that was another click on 3. Okay, another click on 1, and we're back into a deep false set. Sorry, that was a click on 5, I mean. That was a click on 1. Okay, all the pins feel loose, so I'm going to start working on the extra mechanisms, starting with this ball bearing. Okay, you didn't hear anything, but I did just set the ball bearing because we are now in a deeper false set. So now I'm going to try to get the pin in the back, which is the hardest thing to hit in this lock. And you guys might hear some background noise in a second. Sorry about that. Okay, I think we might have hit it. Again, these don't usually make sound, but no. Everything is still springy. I'm going to confirm that we got the ball bearing. Yep, we did get the ball bearing. So it is this back pin, that's just being stubborn. And I think that's what it is. Alright, let's check again. All right, there we go. the lock is open. So yeah, those extra locking mechanisms don't really give any audible feedback. It's really just, it makes your false set a little deeper. So if it just so happens to bind very closely to any of the pins, it becomes quite difficult to figure out if you've hit it, as was the case with that little pin in the back. Sorry about the noise, I don't know if you guys can hear that. Alright, so let's adjust here for gutting. Sorry about the wobbling. Alrighty. So what I'm going to do is actually get the pins out of the top, because as you might imagine, there's quite a lot of stuff going on in this lock, and I haven't gutted this lock in a long time, so I don't feel like messing up today. There's a nice little Allen screw on the side. Which is actually also a very interesting top situation. There's this metal bar that covers the actual top plate. And then I'm just going to grab a thin pick and get them under here. There we go. And I have in the past had this top plate fly off in the stratosphere, along with many of the springs, so being careful this time. Come on. There we go. Alright, there are the springs. And this is actually a very rare case where a stock lock has security key pins, which isn't something that you see very much outside of the realm of challenge locks. And Dom actually does this very well, because they put their special key pins only on the low cuts, and they can actually be very annoying. I did manage to avoid getting too messed up by them in this particular pick, but they have caused me some trouble. So pin 1 is a standard and a spool. Two, you can see, is a torpedo and another spool. Oh, 3 popped out. Oh no, don't fall. I lost him. Come on. That's an anti-drill pin. Okay, this is the key pin for 3. Where did the... That's the other... There he is. So, there's the key pin for 3, which is a spooled T-pin. I'll do close-ups later. Here's 4. This is another torpedo. And then we have 5. Which is a barrel. Alright, let's do some quick close-ups. These are actually very interesting. Let's actually center this a little bit. So these are the spools. You can see they have a little angle on them. They're otherwise very sharp. these are the security key pins. And they're very interesting because they're designed so that when you overset them, they're still springy. You still like have a lot of springy action on them. So unless you know that this is a low cut pin, it's actually very hard to tell when it's overset, especially when the lock is flipped the correct European way. And then this was the middle spooled T-pin, and it actually does, it's hard to see on camera maybe, but it does have a little extra spool element on the end, so it's not just a T-pin. And then lastly we have our barrel in the end here. But that's not the super interesting part about this lock. The interesting part about this lock is the active sidebars. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. And I will mention that I absolutely hate this clip. It's like halfway between a SIR clip and a C clip. Damn it. Come on, get off. You seeing this shit? Oh, that could have been bad. Got it. Okay, and now that the top pins are out, this should... Oh wait, it actually doesn't slide right out. Let's get the key in there. Come on. Why is this lock so difficult? I don't remember this being so hard. There. Just had to get some force on them. These sidebars do not like to come out. There we go. Okay, so now for the fun stuff. Let's actually zoom in a little bit here. Okay, so here is the edge of the key. Here is one sidebar, and here's the other sidebar. So let's go ahead and take this guy out. This sidebar is, well, it still has a ball bearing in there, so let's do this one first. This one's actually probably the more interesting one. This one is very weird. So what you might imagine with a sidebar like this and a ball bearing sticking here is that this is purely passive. You would think that there's a dimple in the key that the ball bearing recedes into, and there is a and of course, like if the key is flat, the ball bearing sticks out more, sidebar sticks out, lock doesn't open. And that's true, it actually does act like that. However, it's also active. So if you look at this sidebar, you can see it's sticking out just a little bit, you know, and, you know, dropping out as you do. This actually isn't a ball bearing, by the way. Sorry, I messed that up a little bit. I'm trying to find... really should have brought out my holder. So you can see that when I put this in and I press on the sidebar slips backwards. The reason for that is if the key is not in, well, when I press on the sidebar stays in place, and the lock will not open because there is a little, at the edge of the lock there, you can see this little shelf, and that sidebar sits on that shelf, and that shelf pushes it out a little bit. And because it's pushed out, it can't recess fully and it won't open. So this groove in the sidebar where the ball bearing goes, when you place it in here, you can see that it's actually slightly offset from that ball bearing when this is in the pushed out position. It's pushed out by this spring. And so what happens is the key goes in, pushes that ball bearing out a little bit, and the sidebar gets pushed down, and the groove in the sidebar allows the ball bearing to recess into it in a way that pushes the sidebar backwards. There's force pushing it backwards. And so that's how that active sidebar works. It will not operate unless the ball bearing is actively pushed out to the correct distance. So let's get him out there. Okay. Now we have, I don't think that other part comes out. Right, now we have this other sidebar where one of the passive pins actually dropped out. Let me try to figure out which one that is real quick. Oh, it wasn't actually a passive pin at all. It was the active pin. Okay, so this is the sidebar that interacts with the interactive element on the key. So the way it works is very similar. It has a sidebar with a spring at the end. The rounded edge faces outward so it can interact with the groove. So when it sits here, the sidebar is sticking out. Press down on it as you would if you tried to open the lock when it's not unlocked. It doesn't open. When you put the key in, however, let me get this oriented right. Come on. It's very difficult to film and do this at the same time. Sorry. There we go. Okay, we're in. You can see it's sticking out slightly because it's pushed inwards and it's sitting up on top of the little pedestal created by that conical pin. So the key goes in, and you see as the key goes in, this pin gets pushed out a little bit, just enough so that now that there is a wedged platform, so that when you push directly down on this, it sinks backwards, like so, and allows the lock to turn. In the process, also, when this sidebar recedes, this might be difficult to show. Let me actually manually press the pin down. Yeah, this might be tough. I'll just press the spring. Now the sidebar wants to stay in. Okay, this isn't really showing up on video. The act of pressing this sidebar, oh yeah, there it is. You can kind of see it. But when the sidebar gets pressed in, it actually pushes the profile pins out a little bit. And so this sidebar also acts as the blocking mechanism for the passive pins, to where if all these little dimples to the side of the active pins are filled in, those pins will get pushed into this sidebar, and it cannot recede fully. And so sometimes when the sidebar recedes, you can actually see them push out a little bit into the keyway. So there is that. And then finally, there's the way that the interactive element works. So you can actually look into the front of the keyway here. You can see this little cutout at the top. So when this goes in, you can see that the little wheel has just enough room to go there. However, if you look in the back, the cutout that used to be at the top is now at the bottom. So what happens is the key comes in, and me pushing on the sidebar is making it. All right, let's get a good angle here. So the key comes in, and at a point around here-ish, the cutout goes from being up here to down here, which means that the little wheel, you can maybe see, gets pushed downwards below where a non-interactive key would be able to go, and hits that little pin there, allowing the sidebar to recede. So that is all of it. That's how the two sidebar elements work. I apologize for all the bumbling around with the gutting. That didn't go as smoothly as I would have hoped, but in any case, that was the DOM IX6sr. Hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a good one.